Okay. I'm making this because the most common depression issue that I've been having in the last several months is first and foremost my constant battle with diabetes. Now, I'm going to stop your judgments, hopefully, right now, before you get into that, oh, well, it's his fault because he's fat, or because he's not taking care of himself, or blah, 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 blah. Whatever it is that you think about diabetes, I want you to kind of just erase it for a moment. Because there's a difference between what I have and what Walter Brimley talks about when he goes on and everybody makes fun of him when he says diabetes. Because that's not what I have. I have what's known as type 1 juvenile onset diabetes mellitus. What that is an autoimmune disease. Basically, my body turned on itself at some point because of some trauma or some genetic reaction or whatever it is. The cause is unknown. It can be a wide range of things: damage to the pancreas, damage to the body itself, shock to the system, whatever it is. Most likely it was because of the fact that I've died twice after I was born and I was so sick for so long. But what ended up happening when I was 3, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. What does that mean? And how is that different? Type 2 diabetes is brought on by diet, lifestyle, alcoholism, and at times is brought on by trauma as well. Type 2 diabetes, however, can be managed and even cured if you fix the issues that caused it, such as stop drinking, or lose a bunch of weight and eat better, or get exercising and be healthy, or fix whatever trauma it was. I mean, there's multiple ways. I know a lot of people that have type 2 diabetes that no longer have type 2 diabetes because of the fact they pretty much cured themselves. Are they still at risk? Yes, but they made the changes and good for them. For me, however, that's not an option. There is no cure for type 1 diabetes. So that's why I want to specify right now, because it frustrates me when I say diabetes, or I hear people talking about diabetics and they just assume that we're a bunch of fat asses that can't take care of ourselves because we're stupid and we just decided to throw away our lives. That frustrates me. And I want that to stop. There are currently 1.25 million people in America with type 1 diabetes. A good portion of them are, there are 200,000 youths with this disease. And, what we deal with on a daily basis is horrible when you really think about it. My life in its entirety is lived out of a bottle, a small vial of insulin that I purchase currently from Walmart because they have the cheapest prices for $25.95. I have two types of insulin. I have an N and an R. R is a short-term regular insulin, is what it's referred to as. It's short-term, it's fast-acting, it doesn't last very long. N, or NPH, is a long-term. It has a chemical in it that extends its breakdown in the system. But you ask, what is insulin? Insulin is a key. Your body runs on glucose. Insulin is the key. If your cell is a door, it's a door, insulin is the key. It unlocks that door, the door opens, and glucose can come in. Glucose is then put into a cell, it's broken down, and it turned into ATP, which is what your body runs on. So, my body, unlike yours, doesn't make insulin. Insulin is made in the pancreas. It's made by the islet cells. Islet cells are destroyed with type 1 diabetes, and they don't regenerate much like brain cells. So, my body doesn't make this key. This key doesn't exist in my body. So, every day, when I wake up, I have to cognitively be aware of every single tiny thing that can affect my metabolism, my diet, my stress, everything. Because what that does is, because my body has a shut door all the time, I have to guess at how many keys I need to open this door. So I guess based upon taking my blood glucose levels. I take it roughly about 3 times a day before each meal. A good range is between 70 and 110. That's what a normal person's range is. For a diabetic, it's kind of about 120, but it's really not. They want us to stay between 70 and 110. Below 70, you are below what your level is, and you should probably eat something. Above 110, you need to watch what you're eating and maybe correct your dosage. Most insulin is given on a sliding scale based upon what your level is, what you're going to eat, what you're doing that day, and a whole bunch of other things. That's why nutrition is something a diabetic knows. I know about nutrition. Whether or not it looks like it, I know about nutrition. But the funny thing is this. My body is constantly starving. No matter how much food I put into it, it is constantly starving. And that's the problem with diabetes. Because there's no insulin in my system other than what I put in there, my body either doesn't have enough glucose to support itself, or it has too much glucose and can't get access to it to support the system. That's why you have two types of reactions in diabetics. There is a hyperglycemic reaction where your blood sugar goes way high. Your body starts to sweat. You get really, really thirsty. You have to pee a lot because your body's trying to flush out this extra glucose and eventually it can lead to ketoacidosis, where sugar starts to spill into your urine, which is hugely damaging. Okay? Then you have hypoglycemic episodes. That's when your blood sugar goes way low. People get drunk. That's kind of what it's like. We can't think. We can't reason. The reality starts to break around us. We get whiny, we get tired, we get sweaty, we get hot, we get angry. And then eventually we just kind of lose consciousness because the body is slowly shutting down systems to keep the brain and the heart going, because that's what we need to live. So certain functions of the brain, the higher functions of the brain, start to shut down, keeping your medulla oblongata going. You know, basically your reptilian mind that controls your heart and your lungs. Keep it breathing, keep it beating. That's what it does. If you don't treat either end of either a hyper or hypoglycemic episode, it can lead to coma and eventually death. And that's the thing I want to really enforce here. As I said, I buy my insulin, which is here. Okay, this vial is enough to get me for about 2 weeks with my dosages. 3 weeks if I stretch it, and if my levels are really good. Nutrition, as I said, is hugely important to a diabetic because we can eat everything you can. We can eat anything. There is no, my family used to say, oh, diabetes means no sweeties. No, I can eat as many effing sweets as I want. The problem is I have to account for them because it affects my bodies at 100 times more than it affects anybody else's body. Because your body goes, oh, we've got food in it. You know what? Let's make some insulin. Let's get this worked out. My body goes, hey, there's food in here. And that's it. Because there's nothing for it to produce. There's no switch that says, hey, make insulin. Because that switch doesn't exist anymore. Those cells don't exist in my body. That is a type 1 diabetic. Okay? It isn't diabetes, like Walter Brimley would say, because that's basically your body not able to absorb insulin, either due to broken down tissue, bad circulation, too much fat, cholesterol. There's a lot of things, but it's basically a breakdown on your system. Your system can't absorb insulin. It can't get to where it needs to go. It can't get to the door to unlock it because there's something else in the way. Now, what does this mean for a lifetime diabetic, someone like me? Because there is no cure for diabetes. And I want to be really clear with you, because this is what gets me the most angry, is I have friends that will say, well, you don't have to look for a cure, you have to treat the cause. There is no cause for type 1 diabetes. It's an autoimmune disorder. It just happens. It's like breathing. One day you're breathing and everything's fine, and the next day you're breathing and the air is polluted. And then the day after that, hey, your lungs are damaged. Even though you're putting as much air as you can, it's not getting to where it needs to go. Okay, it may not be the best example, but that's what it is. It just happens. Something happens to your body and it shuts down. I knew someone whose son had gotten in a car accident and had actually gotten stabbed with a piece of the car through his pancreas, cut it in half. Because of that, he was suddenly diabetic because those cells were now dead. I've had friends that, like me, were born diabetic. they just, their bodies never worked. I was lucky enough to have probably an extended honeymoon period between the ages of 0 and 3, to my body was still kind of making insulin, but it was generally getting bad, worse and worse and worse, gradually over and over, until eventually it just couldn't support itself anymore. What did that mean? From what my mom explains, what I can remember is a doctor walked in and said, "Hey, your son's diabetic. You have to give him this from now on." And basically threw at her a syringe, which, okay, give it to him, you're going to die. I have known my mortality since I was 3 years old because I was constantly told, if you don't do this, you are going to die. So, kind of a tough thing for a kid to understand. So, I don't mean to sound ungrateful or derogatory to any other disease, but I really can't stand the whole buy pink shit, because that money doesn't go to fight cancer. It go only maybe about 1% of it goes to fight cancer. The other 95, 99% of it goes into someone's pocket to keep the house, keep themselves rich. Diabetes doesn't have those kinds of things. There is a Diabetes Association of America, or the American Diabetes Association, which is the ADA, and there is the junior, or the Juvenile Diabetes Association, which is the JDA, which was actually started by Mary Tyler Moore, who herself was a diabetic, type 1 diabetic. We don't have pink. We don't have red. I'm not even sure we have a ribbon or a color, but it doesn't matter, because here's the problem. Insulin and diabetic treatment is a $6.1 billion a year industry. Insulin, this stuff, is made from extracted human genes. This is actual human insulin. It's not some fabrication. They took the gene sequence, they put it into some E. coli bacteria and spliced it in. E. coli's do nothing but make protein, because that's what insulin is a protein, and it just generates it over and over and over and over and over again. They scrape it out, they clean it up, they add whatever they need to it, and they ship it off. So it comes from the human, okay? When it was first invented, it came from the pancreases of dogs. Eventually, they started using pigs and cows. But eventually, they cracked the human genome to the point where they figured out where insulin, what part of the DNA sequence was insulin. And they said, oh, this is what we need. Let's cut it out. Let's go from that. Where did it come from? Abortion. I'm not a huge supporter of abortion, nor am I someone that will deny anybody the right for abortion, because it's not my choice. It's not my body. I do know that I wouldn't be here, most likely, if it wasn't for fetuses, because that's where the genetic code from insulin came from, was research like that. It's sad to think about that, but it's also sad to think that we don't do more with stem cells, because it's been proven that stem cells can regrow islet cells. Right? Now, back to the larger problem. Why is there no cure for diabetes? Well, the pharmaceutical companies, who are the ones that are making all of this money, like Lilly is the big one, making all this money off of insulin and all the glucometers and the test strips and the syringes and everything to keep diabetics alive and treated, make so much money that they basically are the ones giving the money to research to cure it. But they have the right to say, no, we don't want you to release that. Nope, we don't want you to go public with that. No, we don't want to go to human trials with that yet. No, they basically can block anything that they want because they're the ones giving the money. It's sad, but it's the industry that we're in. So why does this matter? Why do you think it would frustrate me so much? Well, I'm broke. I've been broke pretty much for the last 4 to 5 months. Every penny that I've gotten that hasn't gone immediately to rent or some bill goes to buy this. Because here's the real kicker, and I want you guys to hear this. If I don't have insulin, I will die. People ask, oh no, if you were crashed on a deserted island, how would you survive? Or if it was a zombie apocalypse, how would you survive? Or if you were trapped somewhere, how would you survive? That's the funny thing. as creative as I can be with my answers and how much I know about actual survival, I wouldn't. I wouldn't survive. I have at most 3 days without insulin. That's if I keep my normal diet to what it is. The last diabetic died without insulin, I think, like 1930s, 1940s, somewhere in there, maybe even sooner than that. She lasted 3 months after her honeymoon period. Or no, sorry, she lasted a year and a half. Um, but because her body was constantly starving and it was gradually shutting down, it wasn't the diabetes that killed her, it was actually diarrhea. She was eating nothing but salad and olives. That's all she was eating because she couldn't put anything else into her body because it would cause havoc. She died at the weight of, I think it was 56 to like 48 or 56 pounds because her body had starved to death. For me, it would be worse. So I've got maybe 3 days without insulin, maybe a week, 2 weeks at tops. And that's the reality that I've known since I was 3. That without this, I die. I have been living when maybe I wasn't supposed to be. Diabetes has been around forever. It used to be called the sugar sickness. It used to be called the yellow pants disease. There were multiple names for it, and usually what happened when kids got it, they didn't live; they just died. But before that, they were usually isolated. A good portion of diabetics were put into sanitariums, what we now call mental institutes or nut houses, and they were basically left in a corner, pissing and crapping themselves to death because there was no way to treat them. A famous movie, Dances with Wolves, actually had a diabetic in it. The sergeant, I believe, sergeant or colonel, that assigned Kevin Costner to his small little fort, had the sugar sickness. It's evident by how much he was sweating and how random he just says, "Oh, I just pissed myself," and then he blows his brains out. There's been a huge misconception in movies and in film and even TV shows about diabetics because people don't look into it. People don't do the research. The best media I ever saw about diabetes was a graphic novel by Grant Morrison called Joe the Barbarian. It's about a kid who doesn't eat his candy, which is not, still has its issues, but basically he doesn't have his afternoon snack, and his blood sugar goes low, and it visually takes you through the crazy hallucinations that he has, where his toys come to life, where he's battling down, trying to get down the stairs to the basement to get soda because his blood sugar is so low. And when I read that, it was the most accurate way I had ever seen anybody try to explain what happens to a diabetic when our blood sugars go low. When our blood sugars go high, it's worse because we don't get delusional right away. Just a lot of pain. Our stomach hurts. Our body starts to sweat. We start to pee all the time. We can't get enough to drink because our body's just flushing. And then eventually we just shut down and we die. It's sad that this is something that kids today are still getting. That even we're finding more and more young adults and even adult onset juvenile diabetes. Something's happening. And I think we need a cure. I would love for a cure. Diabetes is so bad and has brought me so much pain that as much as I hate certain things, I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. Because I would not wish this on anyone. It's honestly one of my biggest fears is to pass this on to my kids. It can't be, it's genetic. Everybody's got it. It just happens. But to watch my kids go through what I've had to go through, no. So, Diabetes sucks. It really sucks. We're at the whim of the almighty dollar, or Deutschmark, or peso, or loon, or whatever currency you have. In this country, our healthcare system sucks. I don't have insurance right now because one, I can't afford what's in the marketplace, and two, I have been denied Medicaid multiple times. So I have to buy my drug to live. But even with that, it's sad. Back in the summer of 2016, everybody lost their shit because EpiPens for reactions to bee stings went through the roof. They went from like $25 a prescription to $500 something a prescription, which is ridiculous. But what no one noticed is that EpiPens for diabetics, insulin itself, our lifeblood, went up 500%. Even when I had insurance through the marketplace, they wanted me to pay $650 a month for one single type of insulin, and I need two types. That's $1,300 just to live. That's more than what I pay in rent. So the question is, do I pay to live, or do I pay to have a place to live? So everybody that's arguing about healthcare and how, everything that's going on right now and blah, 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 I want you to understand that when they say pre-existing condition, they're talking about me. And that's always going to be a thing. Being diabetic not only has taken freedom away from me, it's taken choice away from me too. I can't join any branch of the military. So I was unable to join the military, which was probably the only way I was going to get college paid for without coming out of pocket, which eventually I did have to do. I can't be a fireman. I can't be a police officer. I can't serve and protect people that I love because I'm a liability. I can't be a commercial pilot, so I can't fly. I mean, I can fly privately, but not commercially. Insurance companies won't cover me. I can't be a sailor or work on a ship because French maritime law says that type 1 diabetics are too much of a liability and shall not crew for any vessel. Choice. Freedom and choice have been stripped from me, and I didn't do anything to deserve this. None of us did anything to deserve this. So it's a frustration because the bigger issue is the complications that come with diabetes. Imagine that your car is out of oil, but you don't know it. So you check your oil, you put in what you think you need, and you keep running. Engine keeps running, keeps going, but it starts to clunk a bit. So you put some oil in. Keeps going, and you put it in when you think you need it. You're not quite sure how to check your oil, and not quite sure what to look for, and eventually your engine just erodes because of the lack of oil in it. That is the best analogy for a diabetic body. Lack of circulation, messed up endocrine system, which is every hormone, increased weight gain for no apparent reason, increased weight loss for no apparent reason, eventual loss of eyesight if you're not cared for it. As I said, circulation and eventual nerve damage is possible. Liver failure is a huge possibility. Kidney failure is a huge possibility. Erectile dysfunction for men is a huge possibility with diabetes. It takes everything from us eventually. No matter how good you are as a diabetic, it will eventually take everything from you. So in the last 25 minutes, I've hoped that I have broadened your horizon on diabetes And for those that want to nitpick, yes, if you look behind me, there's regular soda behind me. My blood sugars have gone low, and that's the only thing I have to treat it because I don't have any money for anything else. So a few swigs of soda gets me back to normal, and I'm okay. The bigger point is that this disease, unlike cancer, unlike AIDS, unlike a lot of things, is not well known, nor is it celebrated. And it might be interesting to use the word celebrate, but when you think about it, both AIDS and cancer are celebrated in their triumphs, in their endeavors, in their loss, in the grief that comes with it. Diabetics are just in the background, slowly but surely dying. I don't want to take anything away from anybody else because everybody in that boat is a sinking ship. Some sides of that ship sink a lot faster. But just like me with a pre-existing condition, cancer and AIDS will be marked as a pre-existing condition, and their medical funds will go through the roof as well, and they might even go away. If I didn't want to live, I would have taken my life a long time ago. I would have just stopped taking my insulin and let myself die. I want to live. So 4 times a day, I shoot myself up. I take injections. I did the calculations for how many injections I've done in my life, and it was somewhere in the 300,000s. Imagine your kid has to do that. Imagine you have to do that. Imagine your wife or your husband or your father or your mother has to do that. There's the reality. It's a sad one. And it frustrates the living hell out of me. Thank you for watching this, and thank you for maybe better understanding what it means when someone says I'm a type 1 diabetic, or I'm an insulin dependent diabetic, or I'm a diabetic and this fucking sucks. Good day.